First person shooter, FPS. It's a term that feels like it's been around since the beginning, but to some of us, it still feels quite new, just like your website could be with sponsor Squarespace. Back when the original Doom blasted into our lives in 1993, there was really no such term. After all, apart from a few primitive examples and Wolfenstein 3D, we'd barely laid our eyes on the genre. But Doom set in motion a time bomb, a bomb of such potency and volatility that it would explode within a year, as game after game was released showcasing worlds all seen from your protagonist's perspective with no other bodily representation apart from a hand and a gun. The first-person shooter was born. Fast forward almost 30 years, and it's still very much firmly here. In fact, it hasn't left us since. But the dynamic, the context of FPS games has changed. Rarely are we now simply dropped into an unannounced world and expected to fend for ourselves. Urgency has been replaced by story. Freedom has been replaced by mission objectives. Excitement has been replaced by, well, regenerating shields. Now, don't get me wrong, there's certainly a place for all of that, but it's no wonder that the vintage form of FPS and the raw excitement it brings with it is firmly back on the table, in a big way. In this video, I'm going to take a look at a whole bunch of titles which have hit the PC recently, as well as a few more from the not so distant past. Retro FPS. What better place to start than here? The naming is spot on for starters, and in the words of its creator, Mac Zero, it's like when you order Doom from Wish. A perfect analogy for the modern day then. But it's also the perfect place to begin because it boils down the constituent elements from the original wave of FPS games into its core essentials. Intense soundtrack. Check. Kinda. Fast twitch movement. Check. Simple controls. Check. Enemies that end in a bloody mess. Check. Basic exploration mechanics. Check. And of course a range of weapons and pickups, all of which combine to create a frantic, visceral experience. It also highlights some more contemporary implementations to this 90s FPS genre. The directional arrows with Control and Shift have made way for WSAD. Running or sprinting is now usually on as standard, with Shift actually slowing us down. And to keep our ever-expanding minds occupied, roguelite elements are often incorporated. Despite what some will proclaim, none of these features are seemingly bad. They help fit these games into our modern era with less friction. But I think what's absolutely critical for an FPS of this nature is that it makes you feel like you have freedom, but also a defined, evolving path. I want to feel like I'm part of this world but still have a purpose. Too much freedom and you start to feel lost, aimless. Too linear a path and you lose the sense of adventure. But the overarching mechanic is to blast whatever is in your path and get to the end. Basically, I want booming satisfaction from shotguns and the ability to flush any toilet I see. Of course, restrooms aside, the original Doom perfected this formula, but Doom 2016 managed to resurrect it in a way which seemingly straddled the modern and the old. I mean, the fact you have a running range more than a disgustingly unhealthy asthmatic is good enough for me alone. Of course, it's not the first to recreate this era of old. The 2013 reboot of Rise of the Triad managed to revive the feel of Apogee's classic 1994 experience, and even games like Space Hulk Deathwing and Crowbar's Black Mesa managed to resurrect their own slightly different, but yet still grounded takes on what a 90s FPS should be. But the problem with reboots is the inevitable comparison between old and new. which you cannot help but draw. A retro revival then requires new blood. It requires a new game. Before I get into the games, allow me to discuss how you can revive your dated 90s website with my sponsor, Squarespace. Search for a template which suits, swap around the text, maybe add some pictures with the incredibly simple interface, and you're good to go. A site for the modern era that works across all platforms flawlessly. Drop by squarespace.com/nostalgianerd to set everything up for free, and then use the code nostalgianerd for 10% off your custom domain or website. Paranautical Activity from 2013 and 2014's Heavy Bullets both borrow randomised roguelike dungeon crawler elements, knotted with 90s mechanics and a colourful neon landscape, making you feel like you're at your, say, mate Ben's 10th birthday party at Quasar. Both result in playable titles, but their shallow gameplay and abstract environments make it difficult to become immersed, and frankly, immersion is what I'm after. So how about Devil Daggers, released by Sorath in 2016? Well, it certainly borrows elements from the 90s FPS. Here we find ourselves in an arena, fighting off waves of pixelated skulls which spew out towards us. It's gruesome, simple and engaging, with twitchy, strafing action a necessity, but it lacks the campaign-like progression you need to make a fully rounded experience. Strafe from 2017 then is perhaps one of the first in this revival era, which gives us a brand new campaign game which has been thoroughly dipped in vintage mechanics. I mean, you get a fake DOS prompt for starters, and the game itself is actually a lot of fun, although you get a feeling that it didn't perhaps have a clearly defined direction. We seem to be on a spaceship with Quasimodo's offspring coming after us. Now, if Strafe was a lot of fun, then Maximum Action is a disgustingly insane amount of fun. It has an 80s synth vibe from the go, which perfectly suits the Hong Kong cinema style action. Throwing Duke Nukem 3D and Hotline Miami into a blender would likely produce something similar. Although it's clear that The Matrix was a big inspiration here, and this feels more like a homage to a past era rather than reviving a past era. I should note that the weapons in this game are satisfying as hell, but especially the shotgun, which oddly seems to have fallen out of favour to modern gamers. I couldn't find any toilets, which are almost essential in any good FPS, and I'll be noting both of these features from here on out. Now, here's a game which feels like it was released yesterday, but it was actually back in 2018. Don't worry, I'm angry about it as well. But Dusk is the title which stands out as bookmarking the start of this 90s FPS revival. Maybe because it feels directly related to 90s games without wedging contemporary action in. If you shoved Silent Hill and Quake through an upscaler, you'd have something similar to Dusk. From the go, you have an immediate understanding of the situation you're in. There's no need for a scripted story. The story is you've woken up in dire circumstances and need to get the hell out. And I find this a crucial part of the 90s FPS genre. It gives you impetus without all the faff. Another crucial element, although I hadn't realised it before, is dual-wielding shotguns. Twice the satisfaction. It's fast, it's frantic, importantly, it's visceral. I also find it pleasing that the second act reminds me of the Malice expansion pack for Quake. The demons and horror are pushed aside for a military endeavour, and the subtle variation just pleases me. The shotgun situation is of course phenomenal here, top marks. Toilets are also implemented well, if in a Deliverance style. Project Warlock decided to rock up shortly after, and of all things brought sprites back into the equation. Yes, that familiar spinning effect has returned, blissfully masking the two-dimensional attributes in full ignorance, and I love it. Reassuring dimensions aside, here we have an FPS mixed with light RPG elements and a liberal sprinkling of magic and wizardry. It feels like it's trying to incorporate all the elements of nostalgia, and it just about pulls it off. The multitude of environments further solidifies this theory. Created by an 18-year-old Jacob Sislow who coded it while still attending school, he credits his father for introducing him to 90s games like Blood and Heretic, proving the point that this is gameplay which transcends the ages. Apparently the difficulty also transcends the ages as well, because Project Warlock is pretty darn difficult, and maybe a little unbalanced, not too much, but it's difficult in a good way, not a frustrating way. Along with the chunky, pleasing visuals, there are some excellent barrel effects as well, with added flames. I'm actually thinking that barrels should be part of this scoring as well. I've heard the shotgun is good, but didn't actually get far enough in the game to collect it. Any toilets would be decidedly sprite-based and therefore redundant. I mean, you don't want to be taking a crap in a two-dimensional toilet. Now, although a lot of the titles in this list are created with the Unity engine, Eden runs entirely within the GZ Doom engine, and was developed and published by a lone soul known as Zan. Beginning life as a Doom conversion, in 2019 it became one of the first commercial titles to run on the id Tech engine, which has been expanded by a dedicated community into something marvellous. Of course, this filters directly into Eden, and you can feel Doom in its bones. Although, if anything, this feels more like an exploratory RPG take on Doom, with puzzle elements, note scraps, which build up a storyline, and various quest elements which need collecting to progress. What makes it feel like Doom more than anything is the engine's inability to accommodate multiple layers or floors on top of each other. You can have lift shafts and staircases, but they will always lead off in a different direction, creating this huge sprawling feeling to stages which I've always been fond of. You don't seem to get a shotgun here, but you get a spike gun, which is reasonable. Toilets make way for medieval guard robes, which do the job, and although barrels are a little light on the ground, there are plenty of other explosive elements and excellent sound effects to boot. Amid Evil feels almost like a sequel to id's Heretic from 1994 and 1995's Hexen, so much so that it feels like New Blood Interactive should have been granted the license just for the hell of it. Much like its predecessors, the main mechanic is seeking out keys to open doors whilst fending off the mysterious evil force that pervades the land. The developers, childhood friends Leon Zawada and Simon Rance, began development with Doom mods, creating a Rise of the Triad total conversion, and actually joined the Interceptor Entertainment team to complete the Rot reboot in 2012. Amid Evil feels like another level though. It's just incredibly complete and a rewarding experience. And although the enemy AI can be a bit simple in places, it's made up for elsewhere. I'm afraid there are no shotguns here, but the axe is very satisfying. Toilets are also unnecessary with so much magic going on. You can likely just teleport the piss from your bladder. Nightmare Reaper is another roguelike, but one featuring almost 60 weapons. You don't really need to know much more than that really. but I'll go on regardless. Waking up in what appears to be an asylum in between each level is a little disconcerting, as are the notes strewn around, and the graffiti, which gets more manic as you progress. Each time you sleep, you enter the nightmare world, and it really feels like it. Cursed demons, strange surroundings, a dog which can be patted or killed, only for your mind to avenge you for it. It's glorious, fast, and it's also compelling, both in the gameplay itself, but also becoming more powerful as the Reaper, whilst unweaving the situation you find yourself in. The shotgun, well, there's a few that would count, but they're all pretty grunty. The hospital toilet is nice, although it gets more concerning as you progress. Barrels go boom, just like any good barrel should, but then again, so do the enemies. This might be a nightmare, but it's a satisfying nightmare. If you've ever played the 3D Realms shooter Bombshell, just know that its supposed prequel, Iron Fury, is significantly better. Not only that, but it's created in eDuke 32, a modified version of Ken Silverman's build engine.
You're lucky I can't fit a grenade launcher in my bag.
Which of course Duke Nukem 3D was built upon. Big shoes to fill, especially as it's the first commercial game to do so in 20 years. Originally known as Iron Maiden before a subsequent lawsuit from the band with a similar name, who had licensed an Android game again with a similar name, Iron Fury puts you in the role of Shelley Harrison, a bomb disposal expert who's about to seriously kick some ass. As you'd expect, it feels like Duke Nukem at a higher resolution, but with disappointingly less quips. I mean, why doesn't Shelley get "damn, looking good" in the mirror? I mean, she should. The shotgun is reasonable, just like Duke Nukem's was in comparison to Doom Guy's. Toilet flush is excellent, as you'd expect. You can even open the lid and watch the water pour endlessly. Beautiful. Wrath, Aeon of Ruin, is another 3D Realms release, and it's another game which feels very Quakey. But there's a very good reason for that. Wrath is actually built on the original Quake 1 engine, albeit with a few enhancements. So this game feels very familiar, and that is not a bad thing. It feels like the Quake sequel we never got, given that Quake 2 wasn't actually a sequel, more of a follow-up game. The environments are dark and foreboding, and fit the departure from sprites that the original Quake game brought. But this isn't just a Quake rehash. There are also some interesting elements like soul tethers. You need to collect these aptly named skulls in order to accrue save slots, and that actually works rather well in balancing out the difficulty whilst adding a tactical element. Shotgun-wise, we have extreme satisfaction here, which continues to be important, even in these dark realms. Seemingly toilets have not been invented, however, I'm sure there's a privy somewhere if you get desperate. Hellbound is perhaps the 90s throwback that tries to be a 90s throwback more than others, whilst perhaps failing to do it as well as the others. That's not to say it's a bad game, not at all, but it's very in your face about it, almost to the point of being cliche.
Enough introduction, let's do this. Head crusher.
From the protagonist himself to the weapons and styling on display, it feels like a poor man's Doom 2016. But that aside, it's still fun to get involved in. I'm probably biased because I prefer pixelation to smooth graphical finesse. The shotgun is acceptable, but the factor kind of gets eroded in the fidelity, and this game feels too serious to incorporate bogs.
I'm back, bitches.
Now imagine popping inside Quentin Tarantino's head during an excessive drug overdose. You'd get post-void. It's almost like combining two of the games I've already mentioned, Maximum Action and Daggers, creating something that's, well, it's addictive. Starting in some kind of tree area, your job is to get through the randomly generated corridor, taking down everyone in your path, before your jar of life spills out onto the floor. Killing people replenishes your jar, but taking a shot or just dawdling will diminish it. This game is like taking a lump of cheese from the fridge and then craving more and more and more until you can't remember your own name or why you're lying face down in the front of the kitchen counter. The shotgun is incredibly satisfying, and I imagine if there is a toilet in this game, someone's head will be stuck down it. Ultra Kill. My word, how do I describe this? Well, to start with, likeable springs to mind. The option to choose between normal PC-style graphics or PlayStation warping textures is excellent. Of course, I'm going to try me some warping textures. Jumping into the game is immediate and intense. It's like a 90s FPS wave or horde game. Take out a bunch of Gene Stealer type creatures, stroll onto the next part, take out some robots that give me a Saturn III vibe, and move on to the next. But the beauty is in the actual tactical elements you can draw upon. Say there's a horde rampaging down a flight of glass stairs. Well, just shoot out one of the stair panes, and most will plunge to their death. Elements like this are perhaps unusual in such a frenzied, fast-paced affair, but it works, and I love it. The shotgun action is top-notch. No sign of any toilets yet, though I guess it's not a priority for undead creatures or robots. Now don't get me wrong, Doom 2016 was incredible, as was Doom Eternal, but Proteus is exactly what I want from a Doom sequel. It feels more like a Doom sequel than the actual games that were sequels, and it seems to combine the very best elements from the original games and the third installment whilst turning everything up to level 11. It's incredible. It's life-changing. I don't even need to explain why. You can see why. Everything you do is satisfying as hell. You don't even need the shotgun, although that's pretty damn incredible. Here's a game which keeps it simple but makes you feel like you're in control. It allows for that feeling of exploration, but it does so with a clearly defined path. A path that's a whole heap of fun. I mean, it's even got a level editor if you get bored, but you really won't. Can't find the toilets, however, so there is that. Now, Proteus is quite a lofty example to beat, but here's one that has just been released, and it wets my whistle. It's called H-Rot, or Hrot, and it's a more sedate affair, but yet still hugely compelling. I get Soviet GoldenEye Quake Half-Life vibes from this, and all those are good vibes, comrade. Very good vibes. That sounded more Jamaican than Soviet. Anyway, starting out in some kind of bunker, there's been an unspecified disaster, and I guess we have to find out what, whilst taking down any protection-wearing weaklings in our path. The blurb notes that Hrot is based in Czechoslovakia in 1986, when times were dark and terrifying, just like the game. And it does what it says on the tin. Now, that's a world which has fascinated me, in fact, since the 80s, and it's a welcome experience. Tactical elements, skeletons that crumble, an exploration mechanic with helpful Soviet notes along the way, a moderately powerful and direct shotgun, and toilets. Toilets galore, all flushable, beautiful. In Soviet Czechoslovakia, the toilets, they flush you. Now, at the time of making this video, there's a couple of other titles in the works. The first is Viscera Fest, for which there is a demo, and even at this early stage it feels promising. We've got another female protagonist, of which I fully approve and get behind.
It's breakfast time. I'm feeling waffles with a side of blood.
We've got working soap dispensers, so I presume toilets will follow, and we've got fast, frantic, fun action. Look out for a release sometime this year. In the meantime, you can grab a demo from their Discord server. Hellscreen is the next title. I don't have a demo for this one, but the footage looks bloody marvellous, as does the blurb. Fight your way through digital demons in a Giga-inspired hellscape. Anything that's inspired by HR Giga gets my vote, and I'll be looking out for this in September 21. I say a couple, there's actually another crap ton of Throwback FPS games in the works. There's going to be more of these games than there are people in the world. We've got what was originally called Hell Hunt, but has since been renamed Dread Templar, which pits you as a demon hunter entering hell for revenge. N-Chain, which apparently takes cues from Super Smash Bros. And Quake, with a cool grappling hook mechanic. And Effigy, which feels like a Quake spin-off as you wake on the prison moon Genna as it goes dark. And a whole host of other offerings which exist in either demo or video form at present. And the thing is, most of them look great. I'm starting to wish I hadn't fallen down this incredibly deep rabbit hole. Okay, now bear with me while I break from our chronological path, because there are a couple more titles which perhaps break from convention a little too much to be included in the main list. The first is Compound, released in 2018. It's a VR take on the 90s formula, but it does it well. This is surely the end goal, is it not? This is what we were all dreaming of when playing Doom and Quake back in the mid-90s, being immersed totally in these worlds, becoming engulfed in a different reality, a frantic, exciting reality that would surely change our life perspective forever. Well, it may not be the 90s anymore, but Compound still comes pretty close to that vision. It ticks all the prerequisites for a 90s FPS, almost Wolfenstein-like in gameplay, but all within VR. My only gripe is I can't play it on a Virtuality headset. Demon Pit is very much like the earlier mentioned Devil Daggers, but with defined borders and a more varied landscape. It's good fun as long as you're happy with the limited gameplay and environment these titles offer. The other title I want to mention, more out of curiosity, is Waifu Hell. Simply described as old school classics with the new twist, and a DLC menu option that I am not clicking here. The object is to shotgun the descending waifus until all are obliterated. Again, it's an arena shooter, and as long as you're into the aesthetic, it's pretty good. In the words of this reviewer, Doom, but better. Beside retro FPS, there are also a whole bunch of other retro FPS indie titles on itch.io, and some of these are fantastic. I really recommend giving these ones a look at the very least. Anyway, that's about it. I've put links to all these games below. I think I've covered enough FPSs to last, well, at least till the end of this current lockdown, shall I say. So I hope you took something away from this. I also thank you for watching and hope you have a great evening. Until next time, I've been Nostalgia Nerd. Toodaloo.